Good evening. My name is Jacob Parmenter. I was raised in a suburb of Chicago. Growing up, I attended a thriving church that my family was very active in. My father was an elder, and everyone in the church seemed to know us. I was saved at a young age, 9 to be exact. My father baptized me. I hope that one day I'll have the joy of baptizing my own son. Although I was very active in church and youth group, looking back, I didn't have a growing relationship with Christ. I went through the motions, I lived a good life, but I held on to my private sins, and that was the way I liked it. On the outside, I was a good Christian boy, but on the inside, I was totally different, and at times, I think I even had myself fooled. When I was in high school, I started dating a girl that I met in the youth group. We had a good relationship, so it seemed, but our physical intimacy always seemed to kind of go up to that line that Christians are warned not to cross. So I believe as a direct result of our physical relationship, we became very attached to each other. We were always together, and she honestly became my best friend at the time. In the middle of my senior year of high school, my father got a job at Lincoln Christian Church as their administrator, and we moved to Lincoln after I graduated, Lincoln, Illinois. My girlfriend decided to attend Lincoln Christian College, so we continued our relationship, and it still had everything to do with our own selfish lusts. Soon after her first semester at LCC began, we broke up. And I think because of our physical intimacy, that breakup was really, really tough, and it was harder to deal with than a normal breakup would have been. She responded by turning to the Lord in her pain. I responded by experimenting with drugs. I thought I was in a pretty good spot at the time. I was smoking a lot of pot, granted, but I was the general manager at the Jimmy John's in Lincoln. I had my own place, and I was only 19 years old. I had suppressed the conviction of the Holy Spirit for a long time before I started doing drugs, so it was a regular practice for me, and I was used to it. My drug use quickly went from smoking pot to harder drugs. I soon found my favorite, it was heroin. But I kept my use to a minimum, knowing full well how dangerous the drug was. On my 20th birthday, my friends and I had a party, and I met a girl. She was with me all night as I was getting sick. Soon after that day, we were sleeping together. Pretty soon we found out she was pregnant with our son, Gavin. He's almost 8 years old now. It's a wonderful thing to have in my life. So we decided to get married and do things the right way, I guess. A little backwards, but. So by this time I was selling drugs on top of using them, but I still managed to keep the hard drugs away from my new wife. Our son was born December 27th, 2006, and my world flipped upside down. After my wife's maternity leave was over, she returned to work and came back that day and decided to tell me that she wasn't going to work anymore. So my response was, I guess I'll have to sell more pot. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment I became a full-blown heroin addict. I moved my family to a new house. My dealer was 2 blocks down, really easy to sneak out and get to. My habit was eventually too expensive for me to afford. I began stealing out of the petty cash at work and fudging inventory to hide my thievery. It took about 6 months, but eventually my bosses sat me down and asked me what was going on with all the problems with the paperwork. I wrote my resignation that night, and that began a 2-year period of me bouncing from one restaurant to another, just filling in management jobs, all the while juggling a full-blown addiction. Finally, after several separations, I gave up on our marriage. I was driving around in the country pretty depressed and very high. I hit a patch of ice. My car went into the ditch and rolled. I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. All I really remember is kicking out the window and getting out and jumping back in to find the illegal stuff that I had in my car. I didn't find it, but the firefighters did. When the police got there, I got charged with driving under the influence of drugs. I was out of jail within an hour. I didn't even get handcuffed, so I felt like I got away with it. And after all that mess was over, I felt like I needed a change of address, so I packed up my stuff and moved in with a high school friend in Peoria. I got a job at a local restaurant pretty quickly. I did well for a while, but as soon as I found my drug of choice again, it began a downward spiral. The spiral ended a little over a year later. I'd just gotten out of jail for stealing checks and cashing them. I went back to my house in Peoria, packed my stuff up, and I had a large amount of drugs at my house also. I did some before I left, and then I got out of East Peoria, did some more. Passed the Tremont exit in the Blur, and did some more. I was in a construction zone, going over 80 miles an hour. I don't remember this accident, but witnesses told the Tazewell County Sheriff that my Explorer flipped end over end at least 9 times. And by the grace of God, I crawled out of this accident also. But by the time the ambulance had gotten there, I was overdosed dead in a cornfield. They have an opiate reversal drug, and that is what reversed the overdose. My dad had gotten a new job at a large church in Peoria by this time. He was called out of the Sunday service to go and see me at the hospital. That accident happened on a Sunday morning. My parents thought they were going there to identify my body. When I left the hospital room that evening, they told me very firmly, "Jacob, we will not take you back to Lincoln. We're dropping you off at the rescue mission, and they have a rehab program. You need Jesus." It took my whole life crumbling around me to realize, finally, that I needed Jesus to heal the pain that I was feeling, not the drugs to numb the pain. I went to the rescue mission to wait for an open bed in the recovery program, Victory Acres. It was an extremely humbling experience to realize that by the age of 26, drugs had brought me to a place of homelessness, and my dad was right. I did need Jesus. So the first time in my life I started to submit to the Lord and to authority. I began to study and fell in love with the Bible. I could actually feel God moving in my life. I could feel him telling me that he allowed me to fall so hard to realize how much I needed him. I knew there was a purpose. I just didn't know what that was. So I waited at the rescue mission for 3 weeks before there was an open bed in the recovery program. And the time I spent there, a total of 9 months, it felt like I was getting my life back. I felt the Lord's blessings every day, and I knew in a very real way that every day was a gift from God. I learned to grow closer to God by studying his word daily and honestly listening to what he was saying to me through his word. After I graduated, I tried to heal my marriage to the mother of my son and failed miserably. Through the final divorce process, I found refuge in God once again, submitted once again, and moved back to Peoria, got a good, solid biblical counseling from a pastor at the church I was attending. I couldn't let go of some of the pain I was holding on to for failing in so many ways. He helped me through it by directing me towards some verses and explaining what they meant to him. Now, after a long, difficult process and recovering from drug addiction, I'm able to minister to guys who are in the same boat that I was in just a couple of years ago. I am the food service coordinator at the Peoria Rescue Mission, which is a huge blessing and a daily reminder of God's real redemptive work in my life. I'm engaged to a woman who loves Jesus, and the fact that she knows my entire past and all of its terrible details and still loves me is the personification of God's grace to me. Even though I'm no longer addicted to drugs, I still have my faults. But God picks me back up every time I fall and reminds me once again that I need to lean on him instead of trusting in myself. Thank you guys for all of your support. Have a good night.